at 5:01 p.m. Second item on the agenda, public to address the board on closed session agenda items. To submit a question or comment on a closed session item, please complete the speaker card by the start of the board meeting at 5 p.m. During the meeting, speakers will be called upon to make their comment. If you are addressing the board on a non-agenda item, please be aware that the provisions of the Brown Act prohibit the board from acting or discussing such matters at this meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person per topic. Ms. Ellinger, are there any speakers wishing to address the board?
No, there are not.
Thank you. We will now convene to close session at 5:02 p.m.
So you've got first year, second.
A different.
So you can see that, and I don't see that from. So it's interesting.
Like we're good. Ms. Allinger?
Let me just share the screen.
What's that?
I hereby call this meeting of the Belmont-Redwood Shores School District Board to order at 6:20 p.m. Everyone please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to agenda item 6, announcements. We are recording tonight's board meeting. From our closed session, we have nothing to report. And also wanted to note that Board President Jim Howard is unable to attend tonight, but he is following along on YouTube. So I'm April Northrop as acting president for the meeting. Moving on to item number 7, Board of Trustees report. Would anyone like to go first?
I will. We're back. Had a good summer. Welcome back to school. I've heard it's been great stories all around. Excited about that. My kids, my whole neighborhood. It's pretty exciting. I've done a couple of things relative to board work that have been good here. One of them was I went to Belmont at the library, had a Belmont talk meeting about creating belonging, and it was pretty cool. There were some high schoolers from Carlmont and a few community members, the vice mayor and the DEI director, Bridget Shearer, and it was a great. They had a great presentation and a good conversation. A lot of differing opinions and point of views, politically, culturally, all of it. But it was a great kind of collaborative and vulnerable conversation that talked about kind of our from our elders to our kinders and Belmont and how to create space there. And so it was great to witness and hear the ideas from it and give me some hope for my own kids. I also went to an event at Fox Elementary set up. I as an administrator myself, working on school safety, I get to witness some law enforcement training on dealing with school shootings, specifically on a site in our district. And it was an amazing experience, I guess, if that's the fair to say. It was really cool to see kind of what they go through, what they do in its kind of rawest form. Like I hope they're not watching, or I'll say this honestly, I don't think they did perfectly. Like there was things they could learn from it. We learned from it. But it was, I know there was a relief there to see them just work that hard, spend that much time to prepare to protect our kids. And I learned a lot from it. So it was cool to see. Great job today in setting that up. And Sheila and her screaming abilities. Yeah. So it was a cool event. I feel ready for a new school year. My first full school year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Who would like to go next?
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. It's great to get back to school. For the past few years, there's been this kind of like, okay, what are the new protocols? What do we have to do? You know, is it mask or no mask? And when do we have to? I think everyone's gone through the drill. They're used to it and they're following the protocols, but it was really kind of what we can call a normal back to school, which was just a joy. The energy, the excitement that I've seen from everyone today or yesterday was fantastic. So welcome back, everyone. Earlier this week, I got to attend the all district welcome back for all the teachers and staff and administrators and everyone. And it was the energy and I want to thank Oracle for letting us use their conference center, fantastic facility. Everyone was there. They had a nice little breakfast spread and everyone got their food and coffee and chatted. And the amount of energy in that room, it was just amazing. Everyone looked like really excited, ready to go, get the new cohorts in and start teaching and making our kids the best they can be. So it's great that everyone's back and excited. Also at that event, I got to meet Principal Walters and Principal Nagel. Principal Walters, we have attending with us today. Thank you for joining us. Who are leading our staff at Cipriani and Redwood Shores respectively. So welcome them and thank you for your leadership in our schools. And also I want to welcome back all the rest of them or welcome all the new members that are coming on board. I got to meet a lot of them at the welcoming event too. And that was really valuable. Hearing their perspectives, where they're coming from and bringing new ideas in, it'll be great. And I want to welcome everyone from the district back and wish them best of luck this year. Another thing about the summer, I've always been a proponent of green energy and renewable energy. And it's very exciting to see the new solar panels up at some of our school sites. Thank you, CBO Bow, for all the work you've done and Superintendent Gore, all the work you've done to make this happen. So very exciting. And I'm glad that not only are we reducing our carbon footprint, but we're also making money for the district, saving money on energy costs. And I think the lights are a little bit brighter in here now.
Our new lights.
They are indeed.
No flickering going on in here, so it's great.
Thank you, Mr. Leinbach. Mr. Koss?
So kind of to echo my colleagues, I kind of look at the summer as a way to kind of decompress, kind of recharge the batteries, and then at an exciting time of like looking forward. And one of the things looking forward, I'm like most excited about certainly is, again, I also am excited to meet our two newest principals, and I really a warm welcome to Matthew Nagel and Sheila Walters. And I wish them really, we're two seasoned principals, and I wish them really the best as they begin their principalships in this district and this exciting new chapter with us. I'm also I'm looking forward to hearing just updates about the middle school curriculum, the new middle school curriculum at both Nesbitt and Sandpiper, and just the excited energy that both everybody is excited for that. And then, of course, just the work that we're going to be doing this year around implementing the strategic plan, around making about the trustee district new election process and what that looks like. And so, there's a lot of great energy. And I think when I think back on it, I always reflect back on our community and how tight it is and how amazing it is, both from the volunteers to the leadership, to the teachers, to the educators. Everybody comes together for the purpose of the kids. And I look forward to continuing doing that work, that meaningful work on behalf of the district. And I'm very privileged always when I think back on it to be the representative for the district in that process. So I'm really excited as we look forward to just a lot of good things coming up, a lot of good work to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Koss. Just echoing what others have shared. It was great to attend the all district welcome back. Again, thanks to Oracle, thanks to Mr. DeGuara and all the staff for putting on a great event. It was great to see the staff members recognized for their years of service. Amazing staff members all around. And then also the keynote speaker, Ashanti Branch, was very, very inspiring. Loved his message and his presentation to us and his interactivity with the audience as well. Also just wanted to mention that we are in the education commitment campaign period of the joint fundraising effort between School Force and PTAs. So now through October 31st, parents and community members are asked to make a donation during that ECC time period, and that will help support both staff salaries and material items at each of the schools. So you can find out more information on that at eccbrssd.org. And then also just wanted to give another shout out to Ms. Walters for attending the National Night Out that happened at the local park in Samaria. I think it was the day after she was hired. So yeah, that was also a great community event that happened throughout Belmont and Redwood Shores, also San Mateo and San Carlos. So everybody, please look for that in the future. It's always the first Tuesday in August.
Great. I will go ahead and jump in. Superintendent's report. I always smile when you guys capture a majority of what's on my list, sometimes all of it. I will just say we had an incredibly smooth opening. We cabinet visits each. We were assigned schools. I went to all 7 schools throughout the day just to touch base. And it was great to see smiling, excited kiddos back on our campuses. Our office staff and our administrators did an amazing job making sure all of our kids had that just right classroom assignment. Our teachers did some amazing work welcoming and creating those warm environments. And it looks like we just left it back in the summer. So classrooms look amazing. Things are just running so smoothly. Really nice to see. We had a great opening, like you shared. It was year 4 for me. It was the first time I got to see all of my staff in one place at one time for an event like that outside of the barbecue that we do in the spring. Really nice to see. It was an incredible feeling to recognize all the years of service. We have some veteran staff members, which is just a testament to the great things that happen. I'm again, first day was reminded about the amazing partnership that we have with our community organizations. Oracle, the Oracle Giving, not only do they support us throughout the year, the conference space and all the goodies were supplied by Oracle. So we really thank them. As April shared, School Force contributes roughly I think last year was $2.6 million to go to programs that would not be possible without School Force's support. You know, the arts, the sciences, the extra teachers, the extra library support, all those things are nice to haves. And it's nice to have them because of School Force. And with that ECC campaign also does build our PTA partnerships that really work on establishing some of those local initiatives and local celebrations that happen at our school. It's a fantastic partnership. So piggybacking, encouraging folks to continue to support the ECC. Just folks in the room, I think, I want to give special recognition to Director Eastburn and her team who have been working tirelessly to make sure that we're honoring parent requests and school choice and all those school assignments. It's not perfect. We still have some folks that haven't got their requested school yet, but we're still working on that as enrollment settles. Assistant Superintendent who does everything instruction. She made sure that everything's aligned, all of our curriculum, all of that stuff's ready to go. PDs supported. Paulina, Director Nuba, making sure all of our students with special needs have things aligned and ready to go. Rui, all the solar and everything that happened this summer. Jerome, who's think of the Wizard of Oz every time I think of Jerome. He's that guy behind the wall that's making all this tech stuff. Like thousands, I think it was thousands of, he'll share later, of tech things that happened. And then real quick, I'll just mention our enrollment. When I was mentioning Julie, like Victor and Julie there and Alicia, who's been doing enrollment, we've got a ton of new enrollees. Not necessarily resulting in a huge increase, but that balance of moving in and out. We ended the year, these are all kind of rough rough polls, right around 4,022 students we ended last year. With the declining enrollment, we expected roughly 3,916. Don't quote me on any of those. Depends where you pull. They're not totally perfect. And then for 23-24, we actually have 4,031. So 4,022 to 4,031 roughly. We're pretty flat, which is a little bit interesting. We predicted a little bit of decline primarily because we have a lot of TKs. We expanded TK. We had a big graduating class, but it's interesting just to kind of see how things pan out. As the days go by, our enrollment's solidifying. We're doing all those pieces, and Director Eastburn will likely do an enrollment update in September. So all good from my end. Really smooth start.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent DeGuara. Moving to item number 9 on the agenda, speakers wishing to address the board. To submit a question or comment on a regular session item, please submit the speaker card by the start of the agenda item. During the meeting, speakers will be called upon to make their comment. If you're addressing the board on a non-agenda item, please be aware that the provisions of the Brown Act prohibit the board from acting or discussing such matters at this meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person per topic. Ms. Ellinger, are there any speakers wishing to address the board?
No, there are none.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. And Mr. DeGuara, was there an amendment?
Yes, there was a single amendment on the personnel actions. There was one individual that didn't need to be on that list, so we updated it and updated it appropriately here. You have a handout in front of you, but it's a removal of a name instead of an addition of a name.
Great, thank you.
I move the board approve the agenda and consent agenda as presented with amendments.
Sure.
All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. The agenda and consent agenda is approved, 4-0 and 1 abstention. And then moving on to the agenda item number 11, districting update, transition to by district trustee elections. And for this, going to hand it back over to Mr. Guara.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Ellinger, actually, if I can drive it tonight, perfect. Super.
Stand at the podium.
No, I will. So tonight, I do want to do just a districting update. Not so much for new information, but just a public review of where we are. Let's see if we.
Slide it on.
It is on. I'll turn it off. Oh, never mind. It was. There we go. So tonight I'll just kind of review what is districting or redistricting, traditional principles for redistricting, the things that we're going to consider, communities of interest. I'll spend most of my time on the districtor and then just share some additional information and public hearing schedule. Again, the majority of these slides are the same from our consultant. Since I am presenting it, I did brand it with BRSSD and redistricting partners, but these are the slides that were presented earlier. So districting is the transition from at-large elections to by trustee areas. It determines the eligibility for folks to run for office. Individuals must live within the boundary that we determine as opposed to at-large. It also defines who votes in the election. When there's a trustee vacancy, only individuals in that trustee area vote for that trustee section. There's some criteria that we look at when we're developing our 5 trustee areas: relative size, continuity. The districts should be shouldn't hop from one place to another. They should be relatively contained. We should look at communities of interest. We should be easy to identify with understandable lines. And we should keep the districts compact in their appearance. Just real quick, just examples, clearly equal versus unequal in terms of number of people. The people is based on citizens. Actually, they're people within, not citizens or voters or other metrics. It's determined by the census. We want to look at no more than a 10% deviation as they look at across the board. Contiguous contiguity should be thought of as literal versus functional. I have an example of each of that, but an area that is one whole piece is literally contiguous, an area that represents how the population functions or how people are connected is functionally contiguous. So 2 examples. On the left, you have literally contiguous, I can't say that word, right? You see how there's arms that extend in that purple area versus functionally contiguous in that right side definition. We look at compactness versus non-compactness, trying to keep things in nice clusters as opposed to long, skinny arms and shapes that don't look quite as pretty in layman's terms. We also want to take into consideration communities of interest. Communities of interest are the building blocks of districts. Community of interest could include ethnic or language minorities. There's a whole list of things or groups that can be considered communities of interest. Here's a few examples: historical communities, economic interests, racial composition, ethnic areas, just to name a few. What's not a community of interest? A couple examples: political party, Republican versus Democrat versus Independent, incumbents, political candidates. Those are ones that are not considered a community of interest. 3 questions to think about when we think about communities of interest. Does the community have a shared culture, characteristics, or bond? Is the community geographic in nature? Is the community able to be mapped? And how would you describe the community's relationship with the jurisdiction? And how is your community affected by the policy decisions made by elected officials? I pause there because there's opportunity for our community to provide feedback about communities of interest. And this is an important piece that we're seeking feedback. The folks at Redistricting Partners call feedback testimony. The testimony or examples that people provide will be used by us and Redistricting Partners to create those 5 areas. So in terms of testimony, there's verbal testimony. We had 2 hearings in the spring. We'll have 2 more hearings, potentially more. Next one scheduled in September at our September 14th meeting, and then at our October meeting. That's where they can submit verbal testimony. There's written testimony via our website. You can go to Google Doc form, submit testimony there, or you can email feedback@brssd.org. All those places give folks the opportunity to provide us with input. Our website is up to date. It has all of our presentations. It has a video that we did this summer. We did a public session on using the district R map and how to do that. It's pretty easy, and I'll show a couple of slides here. Again, the website there is up there. It's on our website. You click, go to that, and you'll end up on the districtor website that looks something like this. Actually, I jumped ahead. There we go. When you get to the website, you scroll down, it talks a little bit about process. And then you get to this piece where you can see two boxes, a purple box and a red box. That's the easiest way to describe it. And there's two functions within that. The red box on the right is to identify communities of interest. It'll bring up a map. You can identify and highlight on the map and describe what your community of interest is and tell us why, right? On the left side is a purple box, and that's where you actually create by trustee areas, right? You can actually create your map. Two ways to create your map, right? You can start from scratch by going to that purple box, or you can click on a map that somebody else has created. Down below, there's a whole bunch of them already, actually. You can click on somebody else's map, look at their work, and say, I like it, but I would do it a little different. And you can actually edit their map. The software is smart. It's already saved a copy of what you're editing. Once you manipulate it, you can save it again as your map, right? So two ways. Personally, I think it's easier to start with somebody else's. It gives you a little idea, and the pictures, the little pictures that you can see, they look different, right? It gives you a visual representation. Like in this way, the district was cut in slices. Maybe you want to slice it the other way, right? You can look for a pictorial kind of representation of what you were thinking it might look like in the end. When you click on that purple box, you're going to get up something that looks like this. I actually clicked on a map that was already drawn. This is a map that was drawn. Up top is the formatting tools. You click the paintbrush to start and then select a color. There's 5 colors because we have 5 districts, right? Click on the color and then you can paint away, click away, and again, pretty user-friendly once you get there. Under the sub tab there's population, which lets you get closer to your first criteria of equal groups, right? So you see in this example, red has quite a bit more folks than say yellow, right? So if you wanted to balance yellow, what might you have to do to yellow to reduce the red, right? That's kind of the work that we need to do, right? They also show that midpoint, strive for balance. That midline gives you that indication of equality to get to that equal group. It's probably never going to be perfect, but we want to get it close. The last thing I'll mention, and it's a little bit hard to see. You see where the red circle is? It says layers. There's 3 tabs: population, layers, and evaluation. The layers one allows you to click on neighborhoods. So if you go into layers before you do this, click neighborhoods, all of the local neighborhoods will show up. So if you want to say, ensure that Sterling Downs is all in one area, you can see Sterling Downs mapped out. So, and it has all of our neighborhoods for both Belmont and Redwood City included in it. And that's really it. The one thing that I'll say that's important is up top, there's that save button. Make sure you save your work. We want to see everyone's thinking. And this is an activity I would love for our trustees to go through as well on your own. Board, if you want to self-identify your map, you can mention that it's a board identified map as well. That's fine to do. But anything that we can do to reference a map at the end of the day is helpful. Other than that, like I said, we had our 2 public hearings in May and June. September 14th is our 3rd public hearing with a goal of introducing draft maps. kind of like we read board policy for the first time. The maps is our first crack with our consultant to see some possibilities. They'll be showing us at least 3 different possible examples for us to consider and or recommend changes. We've scheduled the October 19th for a revised draft map. And then likely the final determination will be made in November where we adopt the by trustee map. With this process, we will also identify election years that the district will be voting. That's up for discussion depending on how the map looks. David, question?
Yeah, for the community to get on the district R and submit some maps. Is the idea, is there a kind of a deadline or is there a suggested time frame so that redistricting can kind of gather the latest input? And
Yes.
also are they kind of periodically at the end of each week, kind of seeing what new maps have been put on the site?
Yeah, they're reviewing it. They're taking a look as we go. There is a requirement, unlike the board meetings, we have to post 72 hours. We actually have maps available 7 days in advance on our website. So the maps for the September 14th meeting will be published by September 7th. Just to put out there. So people have a chance to digest it and think about what we're thinking about. So yes, ideally, doing the districtor in the next couple of weeks would be the best because that's where we're going to get our first shot. But we will definitely look at those maps as things come in for time.
Thank you.
Right, taking down I'm going to use the word illegal, but I mean, whatever, the ones that don't work, do they?
They are looking, they are using the maps that the community generates for, I don't want to say inspiration, but they're going to look at the options that come out from our community and find the maps that in their professional opinions kind of fit all those criteria best and would be the most viable option for us. Yeah. Just in the slide deck, just a few, the data slides that they shared are also included in this presentation.
Can you tell us a little bit about any community feedback we've received? How many maps have been?
You know what? I don't know how many maps. When I was going through creating this, there were quite a few maps generated. I didn't count them, but there were probably more maps than I anticipated. We've received a couple of emails about process via our feedback. Not a lot outside of that. So making sure that we get the word out. I have shared with our community partners. We've taken out ads in the pilot in the Redwood Shores Community Association. It's been in the paper and whatnot. We'll continue to advertise it. That's it.
Thank you, Superintendent Jaguara. Any other questions or comments on this agenda item?
Whoever's next, turn it on.
Great. And now we're moving on to item number 12, which is a resolution which is up for action. Resolution number 2023-24-1, Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Procedures. And for this, we'll turn it over to Chief Business Official, Ms. Bao.
Great, thank you. So to introduce this, first of all, I think often we use the word bid to mean a variety of things. I just want to clarify 3 different terms here. So one is something called direct negotiation. So that is where we might go out and get quotes from multiple people. We would say, hey, how much would you charge for, fixing this light? How much would you charge? How much would you charge? And then we might actually go back and say, hey, why are you so expensive? That's called direct negotiation. It's kind of informal. You're asking for quotes. In the middle, there's something called informal bids, which despite the word informal is much more formal than direct negotiation. It does involve a small packet. It includes a formal process, all of that. And then all the way on the other end of the spectrum is a formal bid. So a formal bid will usually be about this thick. It involves advertising in the newspaper. It involves very, very strict definitions of what we're doing. And it involves, like a rigid process. So a formal opening of the bid, all of that. So currently the threshold for direct negotiation is $15,000, and anything above that is a formal bid. We actually are currently not allowed to do an informal bid, which again is actually still a formal process, just with simply less paperwork. So under CUPCA, it would raise the threshold to $60,000 for direct negotiation and $200,000 for informal bid. So anything above 60,000 and up to 200 would be an informal bid, and above 200 would be a formal bid. The CUPCA is a very common resolution. Most districts have it. One of the reasons that we don't is part of having CUPCA is that you maintain a list of pre-qualified bidders for the informal bid. So in order to submit an informal bid, they have to first be certified as pre-qualified. And that requires a certain amount of maintenance. Over the past, 10 years, we haven't done enough construction. We haven't done enough projects over 15,000 for it to be worth the maintenance effort of doing that. However, we ran into, for instance, trustees might remember with our fencing project, right? So we wanted to install automatically closing hinges. We went out to bid twice. That cost us several $1,000s. Ultimately, we had to issue a statement of futility. Under CUPCA, it would also allow us to go into direct negotiation when there are no bids received, rather than coming back to the board to pass a resolution and a statement of futility. So essentially, CUPCA is a way that allows us to go through the diligence. And by the way, we are not obligated to always do an informal bid. Should we decide we want to do a formal bid for something that's $60,000, we absolutely can. It doesn't obligate us to do that, but it does open up flexibility for smaller projects. 15,000 is really quite a low threshold for a school district of our size when we think about, easily projects may go past $15,000. So given that there's a number of construction projects coming up, so fencing was one example in which CUPCA really would have allowed us to get that work done, completed over the summer. We weren't able to because we were not CUPCA, with Ralston sinkhole repairs coming up. And things like that. And also when we start bidding out, the specific tactical parts of TK, being a CUPCA district, which again, all of our peers and anyone who really does projects more regularly than we have for the past 10 years, it would be very beneficial. And again, does not preclude us from going out to formal bids whenever we feel like that's appropriate. So it is our recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution and board policy that allows us to become a CUPCA district.
And I'll maybe starting now, I'll try to go in order, but change the order. Mr. Leinbach, any questions or comments?
I would be happy to save CBO Bow a lot of time and effort in doing this and the district money. So it sounds like a logical decision to me. No questions.
Mr. Koss.
So you were saying before, besides the need for construction, there's a maintenance kind of requirement. You were said to keep a list, right? Is that onerous on our internal staff? I mean, you obviously are making a recommendation, so you feel that it's not so much of an.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of this, I'm going to make up some times here, but let's say it's 10 hours of work to maintain it. I would say going out to bid once probably takes 8 hours of work. So if we go out to bid once a year, maybe not worth it. If you go out to bid twice a year, worth it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Bruno. And I have no questions. Thank you for your thorough information, CBO Bow. Just wanted to comment as well that I believe that I like the part where that in between $60,000 and $200,000 that will be an informal bidding process. So I'm in favor of it as well. Any further discussion? Okay, could I get a motion to approve this resolution?
I move that the board approves resolution 2023-24-1 and the company AR 3311.1.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you, Ms. Bao. Now, item number 13, Ed Services Update, Summer School, Assistant Superintendent Ching Pei Hu. Ms. Hu, thank you.
Hi. Okay, so I promise I won't talk long today, but I want to give you just a little bit of an update on.
Going on.
Turn it
I
on.
did, I turned it on and off.
Shake it.
I'm not happy. I want to give you just a quick update. Can we go back? On the various activities that have happened this summer. We did. Keep going. Yeah. I know. We had several activities happening on our campuses for students. First, starting with extended school year, which we'll talk a little bit about. We had Power Scholars Academy. We had a summer music intensive. And then even, before the start of the year, we had our new staff orientation. And I want to give you just a little bit of a preview of what's going to happen on our learning day on September 18th, because I will get to see you before then. So figured we give you a little forward look. Extended school year is something we run annually. It is specifically for students in special education. It's always 19 days. It's just something that is governed by law for length of the time. This year, we were able to serve 51 students through the regular 8 to 12 participation in a classroom setting. And we also had an additional 13 students who were on campus throughout the summer just for mental health supports. This way we can maintain progress for some of our most vulnerable students. It is offered to students in grades preschool through 8th grade, and we provide all of the services that happen on the IEP. So whether that's mental health services, whether that's speech, whether that's SEC classrooms like during the school year, we are able to continue OT, PT, everything that the students get during those 4 weeks of summer. One of the new things that Paulina and her team put in place this year is kind of on-site field trips. We had a variety of community partners come to campus to be with the kids, from Redwood City Fire Department, the police department, the library. I believe it's not on here, but I believe Animal Assisted Happiness also came and brought their local petting zoo to the students. The mission of Animal Assisted Happiness in Sunnyvale is to bring 1 million smiles to developmentally disabled students. So it was really not just about maintaining the academic skills, but still providing a fun, enriching summer opportunity for our students. Separate from that, we also had our Power Scholars Academy. We've talked about this a lot. We hired out to YMCA for our second year to provide the summer program. This is for our ELOP eligible students. So for all of our students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, they were all invited. And we had a number of participants. And then our English learners were also invited, but they're not fully subsidized. They are they pay for tuition, but are offered a sliding scale, because just because you don't qualify for FRL does not mean you don't have need. So we want to make sure we're sensitive to that. We had a total of 93 participants. We invited close to 300. We had about 93 register. And that's what we started with. By the end, it had trickled down to the mid-50s. There were families who had gone on vacation and chose not to come back. People who were only able to participate part-time. I had a debrief with the PSA staff today, and we kind of went over, things that went well, things that we want to improve upon for future years. One of the things I think that really helped this year was having one of our own staff members, Stephanie McMaster, who was a reading specialist at Nesbitt, was our instructional coach on campus. So she was the go-to point person at Central during the entire 30 days the program ran. She knew a bulk of the students because many of the students are from Nesbitt. We had 6 teachers, 3 of whom were our staff and 3 were from either local districts or even our substitute staff. So it was great to have Belmont BRSSD folks who knew the kids on our campus. If you'll remember from last year when we did the data review, there was tons of growth in the short 30 days. We'll get preliminary data from them in October, and I'll share that out with you publicly as well. What you see on this picture is the graduation that Dan and I were able to attend. PSA is not just something the YMCA runs for us. It is functioning across the peninsula, and it is a program that YMCA outside of just our peninsula runs at multiple school sites. So this summer they pulled together the sites that were running at Jefferson, that were at South City and Belmont-Redwood Shores, and they hosted a full graduation one afternoon with performances from the kids, prizes and raffles for the students, you know, hors d'oeuvres for the families, and invited all the participants and their families to participate. It was really quite neat to see. We also offered a summer music intensive this year. Unfortunately, we were only able to do orchestra and not band. Our band teacher, who typically is gung-ho about leading summer school, started a master's program. And so, of course, it was in person and conflicted with the exact dates that we were hoping to run this. So we were able to do 9 instructional days between June 20th and June 30th. Alexis is our elementary music teacher. She is also professionally trained as a violinist, and prior to coming here, she was a choral director and orchestra director at a local private school. We won't name where. She had 50 participants with her for each group was there for 2 hours a day. And so they got a little bit of small group kind of instrumental sectionals, if you will, a little bit of ensemble with the beginners and the advanced students playing together. So there's a little bit of motivation for the beginners to practice more so that they can keep up with the more advanced, but then also separated time. So those who were more advanced didn't feel like they were sitting around waiting for those who are learning how to tune their strings while they're ready to go a little deeper. So that's a great uptick from previous years. We've been doing a band camp-ish for the past couple of years since coming out of COVID. First, it was to make up for the fact that we couldn't really teach band and strings virtually. So we knew that when they came back to 6th grade, they needed a little bit of a booster before coming. It was so popular, we've continued it. We've never had 50 orchestral participants before. We've typically had about 60 participants between band and orchestra. So hopefully we'll be able to bring our band teacher back for the summer in 24. Because I think it's clearly, I mean, it's a small number, but for those who participate, I think it's highly valuable. I guess it was just a week ago. We had our new hires here in this room with us. We didn't have every single one because we hosted new staff orientation Wednesday and Thursday. We had people hired Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. join us Wednesday morning. So the HR team has been hiring nonstop. We weren't able to obviously bring every single person. So we did have a couple of new hires who didn't start till the 14th on Monday and join us, but we did have 29 participants here. Super fun day, 2 days. We do a lot of team building with them and a lot of fun activities that really is in the hopes of we're going to model how to build relationships quickly, how to have fun together so you can steal some of these activities and repeat them in your classroom. And one of my favorite things to do at the end of the orientation, I mean, we're also inculcating them into the BRSSD way. We're talking about curriculum, we're talking about SSD process. Here's the protocol, here's our culture. But one of my favorite things to do at the end is always to read through their feedback of what did you like? What should we definitely keep for next year's group? And what do you want to do away with? What would you suggest we do less time on? And inevitably, someone will say, I hate icebreakers, but yours were actually really fun. And it's come up a few times every year. And I'm like, I don't come up with them. I steal from the D school, right? We go to trainings. We get great fun activities. We don't reinvent the wheel and we provide them to our staff. But ultimately, I think over a day and a half, all of our newbies got to meet their principals. We had the induction people come in, so we're making that easy. We had American Fidelity Employee Benefit Services come in so we can help them with their 403Bs and 457 plans. We had the San Mateo County Library come to say, here are all these resources we have for teachers that you can tap yourself into. So I think they walked away really excited. It's a great group. Really happy to have all 29 of them, plus any new hires that we've acquired along the way. Coming up in September, we just wrapped up on our first big learning day where we did a big launch. You guys were part of the SEL. We're going to follow up in September with a half day of training for our sites. The logistics, I have the trainers in place, but I haven't worked out all of the logistics, so we're not sharing any of that just yet. But ultimately, all of our staff, TK through 8, are going to get trained on our new academic screener. Last year, you'll remember at the end of the year, we presented to you the results of our pilot with FastBridge. We've been looking for a more accurate, more efficient reading assessment that would provide more consistent data from classroom to classroom so that we as a system can better support our students and better diagnose where the reading needs really are. So we are going to spend a few hours with FastBridge trainers on the 18th, the entire district, learning about the various components. One of the things that's really nice, as you'll see, I just put a little snippet up there, fast track reading bundles together the subtest that the students need to take. Starting at 4th grade, it is 100% automated. So all the teacher needs to do is help the children, point them to the web link, have them log in just like they do with SRI, and 40 minutes later, they will have a test that measures how the child does on grade level metrics, as well as an adaptive score that tells you how far above or how far below they are. So some of you who are a little bit more familiar with FMP probably have heard conversations of teachers saying, when do we stop? They're a year ahead, they're 2 years ahead, they're 3 years ahead. When do we stop? I spend my whole time assessing. Well, we don't want you to spend your whole time assessing. We want you to get a good picture of where the kids are. And we also really want to focus on the kids that aren't making it. We know that 80% plus of our kids are at or above standards. What our teachers are doing for the whole and universal access is working for the vast majority. This is going to help us figure out what are the components, what are the actual composite scores that show a difficulty for which students. And then we can hone in on providing targeted interventions, really being strategic with our time. So there's 2 assessments at each of the grade levels. There's different subtests that happen at different times of the year. So you're testing different skills. I think it's a pretty comprehensive program. And then for our advanced users, this year, they're just giving the screener. Like, I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but we do have a bunch of FastBridge pilot teachers who are like, well, what about the advanced users? We're ready to go to the next step. We will do a secondary kind of tier of how do you do progress monitoring? What are the interventions? What are the tools? What are the strategies? So that's how we're going to spend half of learning day. The other half of it will be site-based with principal and school leadership teams. I won't hijack the whole day. That's it for the start of Ed Services. What questions do you have?
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Koss, if you'd like to start, if you have any questions.
No, it was, I mean, what a robust summer program. What's the for the music, what were the requirements out of curiosity?
No requirement.
No requirement. So if you play an instrument and you're interested.
It was open to anyone who was in 5th, 6th, or 7th, matriculating to 6th, 7th, and 8th. It didn't matter if you were going to Ralston, Nesbitt, or Sandpiper. You just did, it was for kids who were part of orchestra at some point. It wasn't for brand newbies who didn't know how to play the instrument. But so if you had 1 year of instrumental music under your belt at any of our sites, you're welcome to join. Or if you had instrumental experience somewhere else and wanted to join orchestra in 6th grade, you are welcome to join.
Great.
It just went out broadly to all the 5th, 6th, and 7th graders.
I like the variety in the programming. I saw a little bit of Redwood Shores, dropping my kid off at one of the Footsteps programs. Yeah. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Mr. Bruno?
I was curious about a few things. The Power Scholars Academy.
Yes.
How many students?
We had 93 enrolled at the start and for the first few weeks, but they slowly trickle off. I think 6 weeks is a long time.
Yeah, it is.
Right? It's
I'm sure.
that we offer 30 days of non-instructional time. We think it makes the most sense to do it as a summer program. This is something that we can certainly explore moving forward of, do we break that up a little and do 15 days in the summer and then we do have we don't have 3 full weeks. We have 2 full weeks that we could pull from during the school year where school was closed that ELOP could run. Maybe we could do 10 days there with but that's a little bit different. We completely hire out PSA and it's a separate contract, saying to our community, we're going to do some of those 30 days during the school calendar year means partnering with our local partners who are already bending over backwards. So it's just this balance of understanding what makes sense and what doesn't.
You mentioned tuition. How much does it cost? For a person who's not sponsored.
For YMCA, if you were an EL who did not have any academic need, we use it partially as our academic need summer school too. So if you were student with no academic need and we're paying fully, whether you were EL or not, we never got to inviting the broader population
Right.
just because of the way the invites go. It was $2,000 for 30 days. And if you were a child who needed the academic help, but didn't qualify for the full subsidy and wanted to stay in the afternoons and go on the Friday field trips,
Mhm.
then it was $867, I think, for the entirety of 6 weeks. So it's not cheap for those who are struggling, but for this area, that's how much you pay for 1 week of camp full-time. So
Why Central?
what, I'm sorry,
Why is it at Central?
we were just changing locations this year.
Is it different every summer?
This is only the second summer. So last year we did Nesbit. We decided we needed to give Nesbit a little bit of a break. There's a lot of people on that campus all day, every day. We want to rotate and share the wealth. We knew that Redwood Shores has consistently been the ESY school. So we didn't, 2 years before we had done all of our summer school programs there. And that's hard on them too, because it's staff who have to vacate early, custodial staff who don't have as much time to clean.
All right.
Yep.
So we're just,
Spreading the wealth.
yeah.
What's your go-to icebreaker? One, top one.
One
Not two.
is, I think, the Rochambeau War,
I feel that is, okay.
right? Like I like ones where you don't have to prep anything.
No printing.
Nothing, no printing, no materials, no manipulation.
No play. Have to ask you what that is.
We'll try it.
Maybe we'll do an icebreaker for the trustees.
I can do another one with you that's really good. That's about failing. We could do that at the retreat.
For now?
There you go.
Okay.
We could be- I think we're not allowed to do things that aren't on the agenda.
Agenda for tonight, by the way. Item number 18 or something.
Thank you.
We did a couple fun ones this year.
Sure.
And then Mr. Leinbach, did you have any questions?
Yes, first of all, thank you for putting all these programs on for kids that, can really use these extra boosts over the summer. It's really great to see the opportunities there. With the power,
Yes, eh?
power scholars. So 300 were invited, 93 started, and then it trickled off. But out of the 200 some that didn't come, was there, do you know any reasons why they didn't make it? Is there something we could?
Anecdotally from a few, but I didn't poll them as to why are you not interested. Part of it, we started inviting kids as early as April because we needed to make sure we had enough staff. So we were slow to invite last year because we were slow to find out regulations, slow to get contracts, et cetera. We were much faster, had everything in place in January, but it still took us until the end of March to make sure we had ample teachers on board. Because the last thing I want to do is invite 300 kids, have them all say yes, and then say, oh, sorry, we don't have anyone to teach you. So once we did that, we tiered the invitations. I think a lot of folks think that 6 weeks is too long, just anecdotally. That was hard. I think last year's data was, this is our first time to travel since the pandemic. We don't want to participate. There were others who felt like they just didn't want to do it. They wanted their kid to go do fun things and not be in an academic camp.
Is there like a 3-week option or something, or?
This is what we have to kind of figure out what ELOP looks like. The requirement for us in terms of a summer program, and whether we use PSA for this or not, PSA we can design however we want. If PSA is going to be our ELOP program, we need to have 30 days of non-instructional calendar days spread out throughout the year. It doesn't all have to be in the summer. It could be piecemealed, but that just makes, one more layer of complexity of, did we offer to everybody the same number of days?
Yeah.
And the Fast Bridge program, that was a reading programming, but it does have other.
It's an academic screener that is part of our Illuminate product. So we bought the add-on a couple years ago of Fast Bridge that included SABRES, our social, academic, emotional behavior risk scale. So we do that for an SEL screener, but along with that product, it was a strategic purchase. We needed something for kids to self-report their SEL, but I knew there was this product within that's their fast track reading and fast track math that are already on the What Works Clearinghouse that are valid and reliable measures of and risk. They're screeners. Importantly, the ELA component contains all of the dyslexia screener requirements, all of the sub-tests that we would need to do to determine dyslexia risk, which is also coming down the pipeline of what we're required as a school district to provide for students. So we needed to come up with a more robust assessment system that covered the dyslexia, but also had the ability to be more automated so that our teachers aren't spending their whole life assessing, right? Assessment, I obviously the assessment point, assessment is important, but not if you spend more time assessing than analyzing, more time assessing than teaching.
There's a math.
There's a math component. We're just doing reading right now, but everybody has access to it all. So I'll kind of push it out there and be like, here, you could just click here and try. We had several of our teacher leaders jump into the fast track math last year to find different things, and they've already started just kind of using it personally. We've paid for it. Everybody can access it. Anyone can use it. The requirement is we're switching to fast track reading.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, again, just congratulations on the extended school year program and the Power Scholars Academy. Both seemed like very successful for the kids and the families. And then going along with what Mr. Leinbach was asking about the Fast Bridge, I guess for that September 18th day, say like middle school science and social studies teachers.
Middle school science already has a plan with MG. Terry is working on it. We'll figure out the other components.
Okay, sure. So it will not be for absolutely everybody.
No, and Ralston.
Yeah.
So Ralston, I talked with the department chair, the ELA department chair. I've talked with Sabrina. They didn't have anybody volunteer to be on the pilot committee last year. I think it's important that we as a district make this shift, but I'm not going to pull the Band-Aid off for them this year. We're doing a soft roll. They're going to get to choose if they're going to do SRI for their reading score or Fast Bridge. It's either or, and next year everybody does. So they'll be invited. We're going to do a little bit of personal training at Ralston to catch them up to speed. It doesn't make sense for us to double pay because SRI is another $20,000 contract, and for families to get used to one system only for the primary middle school to do something different is jarring.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions?
Thanks.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Hu. And then item number 14, Local Control Accountability Plan, LCAP update, reapproval. Ms. Hu.
This is me and Rui together. There were a couple of small typos and then one misunderstanding in a financial number. So we thought it best to bring it back for the sake of transparency. In our calculations, you've probably looked through the template many times. You'll notice that we report on budgeted versus actual. And we have 82 actions in goal number 1. So in the full report of budgeted versus actuals, they're all there. But in the template on the next page that goes to contributing action. So of those 84, about 50 of them contribute to increasing or improving services specifically for our unduplicated pupils. We failed to notice when we turned in the template that it cut off at action 50. So we had to have DTS reload and just pull the actions from 151 down to 184 that were part of contributing, because then when it tallied up, it said we'd only spent something like 5% of our expenditures, when actually the heavy hitter items were the ones on the bottom. So when we fixed that, our dollar amount and a percentage of spend was corrected.
There was also on the budget overview for parents, there's a line in there about total amount spent, which there's the total, which is your LCFF allocation. And then there's specifically your supplemental allocation, which is the amount meant to be spent on unduplicated students. It was labeled a little confusing, so I thought it meant total LCFF, but it meant total supplemental. So that number was corrected to accurately reflect.
Yeah, because our total LCF is, 40 million, and our total LCF supplemental is 1.5. Yeah. So we didn't want people thinking we were spending. We had 40 million supplemental dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So
nothing substantive other than
nothing. You know, because I said, we got it, it's all done in June. That's great, it's back. It's not for approval.
So this is an item that's up for action. Is there any discussion before we make a motion or questions? Okay, could someone make a motion to approve the LCAP as presented?
So I make a motion to recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the LCAP as presented, the reapproval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. And vote is 4-0 with 1 absence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is number 15, technology update. And we'll hear from Jerome Simon, Director of Technology. Mr. Simon, thank you.
We'll see if he can be quicker.
Reset it. He's reset it. Did you turn it off?
Oh, there he goes. He got a little nervous.
The pressure's on.
So thank you for having me today. So we had a pretty busy and productive summer, lots of new staff, a bunch of projects going on. Just here to provide you a little bit of an update on our projects, what we've been working on, some of the observations we've had with infrastructure planning moving forward, and just what we have planned for the school year. So the items I'm providing an update on are a little bit of an update on our yearly student information update, some of the support changes we've made since I last spoke to you in the spring of last year, the status of our student devices, our plans for staff devices, particularly our staff Mac pilot, and an update of our summer network and phone projects, and finally, just some information on where we're planning going with the infrastructure moving forward. So the first one is our student information update. So our yearly student information update process went live on August 1st. Some of the information on the slide has changed a little bit as we have analyzed and cleaned up the data. So we had a unique completion rate in our student information update of 3,816 for students. That removes like duplicates, that removes just a overall cleanup of those numbers. Including, in addition to that, we had 1,207 partial submissions. So what a partial submission means is that someone who went through the process, but at some point abandoned it. It's good to know that, just because we can kind of analyze where they abandoned the process, find out, where the issues are in the process. So we had 1,207 partial submissions, but of those partial submissions, only 125 were unique from the full completions. So that means of the remainder of those people actually went back and completed the process in a new application. And upon those 125, only 14% were before the ECC process. So that's generally where we see our drop off is through the ECC process. It's just because it takes you out of the form, and then there's a script to bring you back to it. So there are some families that fall into that. So we'll definitely work with school force on how we can make that kindful murder a little bit more smooth. But it's actually pretty good, to have only about 125, only 14% of those people were after that ECC page. And after the ECC page, all that's left is the confirmation page. So they're pretty much finishing the process, but we still want them to finish the process because that's kind of how we earmark sending out our class assignments and all of that. We've had a few questions from people, well, I thought I finished the process, but when we looked into it, they got stuck there. So that's something to look at, definitely. That's pretty much it for our student information update. It went pretty smoothly. The reason why we allow reason why we allow things like multiple submissions is it avoids the question. We usually get one parent will complete it and another parent will go in to complete it and they won't be able to get into it. And then the question is, well, I can't finish the process, so it generally works out better if we just let them complete it twice, and then we just analyze the data and look at what's there. This item is tech support changes. So We made a number of changes this year to just kind of improve upon the process. We're really looking to reduce lead times for some of our tickets and also increase availability of our staff at sites. We made some upgrades to our ticketing system to better capture some of the support data, give us a little bit more analytics, so we kind of look at that going forward, see where we have to improve upon. So the first item was the improvements we made, the upgrades we made to our ticketing system allow us to add office staff as collaborators. So that's been a big ask, and it really hasn't been supported by our ticket system previous to maybe a year ago. It's just we've moved forward with adding our administrative assistants, our triple S's, to our ticketing system. So as collaborators, they can kind of comment on a ticket within their school pool. They can see what tickets are open. A lot of times they'll have a teacher who says, well, I opened a ticket and maybe it's not there, maybe it was opened at a wrong side, or, all of that stuff kind of happens. So it gives the office admins a chance to look at that, see what's in the queue. And so far this year, it's been working really well. We cleaned up a lot of our tickets. We changed a lot of our grouping. Between the whole team, we're just being more aggressive, responding and being responsible for those tickets. So another change we had is prior to the pandemic, about several years ago, we used to do basically assign our text to a school site. That works well in that it gives them, it gives each of the school sites a little bit of personalization with their staff. The downside of that is it also kind of silos our texts into a single school site, so they don't necessarily understand what's going on in the whole district. And they also we don't really have a balance in that, sometimes an issue will pop up or multiple issues will pop up at a single school site. It becomes more of a load management thing. So we switched to during the pandemic, it became necessary to switch to our text covering all of the sites anyways, just globally. Coming out of that pandemic, now we've gone back to a little bit of a hybrid model in that we have tech leads. We're adding tech leads to the sites. They won't necessarily be responsible for every ticket at the site, but the idea behind it is that they're a point of contact for that site. I'm also working to have them do routine maintenance at the site. So we have a lot of network equipment, things like that has routine cleaning. So they'll be responsible for that. So it's just kind of a little bit of a responsibility for their site. Generally, our tech leads have 2 sites. They're also going to be covering what we're going to have drop-in hours as well, starting August 28th. And that's the next item I wanted to cover. So we're doing tech drop-ins. So that's just a kind of an opportunity for staff to have a conversation with our techs. It's not necessarily, a lot of times we get questions from staff where it's not necessarily a tech ticket, it's more of they're exploring a problem they're having or exploring adding something or using a piece of curriculum. It gives them the opportunity to ask our techs questions. So we're planning to do those drop-ins at elementary sites every other week, 2 hours. And then we're also doing virtual drop-in times. We tried some of the Wednesday ones. Wednesdays are generally pretty busy for staff still, so we're going to alternate between Wednesdays and Fridays and probably alternate the times a little bit between probably do Fridays earlier in the day, Wednesdays towards the afternoon. Just generally Friday afternoon, and not a lot of people are going to come to that. So it's just to give people some variety on that. So we created a BRSD Technology Google Calendar, and this week we're probably going to populate it with dates for those. So plan is our tech leads will cover their drop-ins for their sites. Elementary will be every other week. Ralston will do once a week between 2 different techs, just to give some variety. So tech support changes for the middle school. So at the middle school, we've added basically what's if you've gone to Best Buy or Home Depot, it's a little bit of a lower tech version of that, but we've added these lockers that are basically like a high-tech Chromebook cart. In each of those locker slots, it's going to have a Chromebook and a charger. So students can submit a web form, and then the plan is to get them either the combination code or an RFID card. We're working on both because the lockers do both of those in the same day. So they can pick up a replacement device from the locker and then leave their damaged device there. After that, our tech team, the plan is to kind of, we have a sheet set up to monitor what what's available in those lockers. So there'll be 12 devices each available at any time at Nesbitt and Sandpiper. And then for Ralston, we're doing it's 36 total. And the Ralston one is in the library, and the Sandpiper and Nesbitt ones are being set up in the offices. After we grab the devices, we're going to log those incidents inside of our student information system, ARIES, and the plan is to do a monthly communication to parents for the incidents and to show them the cost of repairs. It's not just generally to charge parents for the repair of the device. It's also to make them aware and make families aware and students aware of taking care of the technology, to just repeat incidents. Things that spurred this a little bit was, our office staff was getting a little bit burdened by having to handle trading off devices. So this kind of moves that process off of them. And it also was a little bit harder within the busy time in the busy school office for them to remember to record in ARIES that information with that student device. Also, our tech team is obviously a little bit more knowledgeable on the issues on the device. So the way we record, we have like a set guide of incidents like screen break, keyboard damage, liquid damage, things in ARIES. They'll be able to document this so we can record them going forward, and we'll have that data as well. Student device new deployments. So between last year and this year, we purchased around 1,100 new student devices from the end of the year into this summer. So 400, if you have an updated number for that, it's a little bit higher. So yeah, so 487 instead of 478 went to grade 6. So there's a little slight increase at Nesbitt and Sandpiper as our enrollment changed. And those devices are all ready. The only caveat is our supplier for our cases was a little bit back ordered. So we got 400 and we're still waiting on 200. So what we did is we went ahead and deployed the devices without the cases at Sandpiper and Nesbitt is what we're doing. And then since it made sense logistically, because we had 400 cases, we went ahead and put the cases at Ralston so we wouldn't have to go back to that. We were using 100 of those Chromebooks back into our spare rotation. So our spare rotation is a little bit low. That covers mostly middle school up to now, but now as we're moving more towards these USB-C Chromebooks, the idea is that it kind of makes it vendor agnostic. We can just swap in any USB-C Chromebook into there so that we're increasing that spare rotation a little time. The plan is to put right now, tentatively is at least 522 Chromebooks into grades K through 5. That number will probably need to be adjusted a little bit for 3 through 5 once we actually go through the carts. But and we'll need to increase a little bit because we're planning to add a second cart for the K through 2 tiers in the grade 2. So the idea is that between the strategic plan, between feedback we've gotten from staff, there's an interest in having more devices at K2, but we just don't want to do necessarily a blanket approach and throw devices, throw money at the problem. We want to see where we need those devices. So we're going to increase at each grade level tier. So there's about 370 devices came back from grade 8 for recirculation. We're still having to go through those just because our summer was mostly spent with new devices and other projects. So about 25% of our district Chromebooks this year will be all new. Of those 25 of that whole fleet of Chromebooks, 75% by the time we complete this deployment will be on USB-C. So our goal was to get to all USB-C just to make the refresh process faster, make the ability to repair these cards faster. So we'll accomplish that by next year. So that'll be really great for our district. It'll improve the support and replacement times on those Chromebooks. It'll just generally a big concern. I know if you've seen it over the years, a big concern for us has been we've had to keep a certain amount of each model of Chromebook in lieu because, vendors stop producing these fairly quickly. And if we have, 15 to 20 carts with a single model of Chromebook, that means we need Chromebooks to replace them. Otherwise, every time we run low on those Chromebooks, we'll have to start just replacing those carts. So what we've done over the years is we've pulled back carts and put new Chromebooks in just to get spare devices. This will make it a lot easier because it is quite a bit of work to just remove all the wiring from a cart and put new wiring in. And that's on the next item with that too. We decided this year to refresh a lot of the carts. So if you see, we ordered 23 carts, those have all arrived, and those are going to 3 through 5. The idea behind that was we've just been we evaluated the carts more deeply last spring. And though we've been refreshing Chromebooks pretty solidly, we haven't been replacing the carts every time. And those carts do see a lot of wear. There's broken wheels, casters, the bearings fall out on things. We've had electrical issues before on certain models. So this is kind of an effort to get those worn carts out of there. I don't know that it's necessarily something that we'll do at the same rate every year. Like, we've had carts that are in great condition as well. But the idea behind this too also is we've been buying the carts pre-wired because it's not a significant price difference. And the nice thing is it takes quite a bit of time to wire up a cart. This way, all the carts are pre-wired. We just have to pull them out of off the pallet and throw the new Chromebooks into there, and they'll work great. So that should reduce our deployment time. Generally, it's taken us for fewer carts than this till about mid-November, late November to just deploy those 3 through 5 carts. This time around, once we have a little bit of a slowdown from the start of school, we're planning on getting those out there. So all of these carts we ordered also are kind of in really efficient packing too. They're just kind of strapped to pallets. So we're going to roll them off there. All the components are ready to deploy. We should have everything out by around mid-September. Next time is staff Mac pilot. So January of last year, we went into throughout an application process for a Mac pilot within the district. So we had 63 applicants. Of that, 26 were selected. We kind of picked it across different grade ranges. And throughout February, we deployed those Macs. The goal of this pilot was just, to see what a district transition to Mac devices would look like. A big piece also was to test our device management solution, our MDM solution, which is Mosel, is what we've been using. So we deployed 26 MacBook Airs to staff. All of those devices are centrally managed. And then we also deployed, a bunch of Apple TVs across classrooms. So the goal behind that is we use a lot of Google Casting. Our teachers use a lot of Google Casting in their classrooms. It's become really popular. Problem with Google Casting is it's really a consumer home product. It's not really designed around an enterprise network. The Apple TVs support a little bit more a robust solution for that. We can hardwire all those Apple TV devices with Ethernet, and we don't have to so much rely on our wireless network, and they run a little bit more siloed. So it's a more reliable solution. Apple TVs are somewhat affordable as well. I don't know that would necessarily be a part of our district-wide deployment plan. It might be something, because right now a lot of that is school site specific. They decide to buy those devices, and it's kind of a low cost item for them to add onto a classroom. So some nice things about the MacBooks is we've seen, in the areas, we added a few staff users who specifically had some wireless challenges in their classroom. We've seen really improved wireless performance for those users. The average battery life, when we're looking at the metrics from our mobile device management solution, is listed there. It's 4 to 6 hours better battery life. Macs generally have better battery conditioning too. They won't charge to 100%. We're setting some of those things as far as ideal charging standard just to preserve the life of the batteries. So they kind of monitor what your usage is, and it'll charge up to that, generally by your usage during the day. That reduces the amount of charge cycles on a device. So we're expecting probably, from what we've checked with other districts and just general usage data, probably 1 to 2 years additional usage off the Mac device. That's removing, wear and tear on the device and everything else, just purely out of battery performance. Because that's if a device is taken care of, usually the battery is the first thing we start to see to fail, down the road. Nice things too is the Macs also kind of fit into our move towards increased security. We're planning on putting all of the Mac users or our pilot users onto a two-factor authentication. So a lot of districts are moving forward with that. We're moving forward with the Mac pilot because I think overall that's something we're going to do with our staff in general. The nice thing on the Macs with the mobile device management is it uses Google authentication. So the two-factor is a little cleaner. It's a little easier to use for staff. It's becoming a requirement for a lot of districts for insurance purposes. So we're trying to kind of get ahead of that too and get on to two-factor authentication in addition to increasing the security provided as well. I think the negatives, I guess the negatives on a MacBook is that it's about 150% of the cost difference of equivalent Windows device. That said, we have a little bit more consistent build quality on the Macs. We have a little bit more hardware control. So the MacBook Air, though there may be changes, between like an M1, M2 as Apple upgrades, the device itself doesn't change a whole lot. So we can kind of deploy it as a standard within our district for a longer period of time versus when we change Dell models maybe every couple of years, just because that changes frequently. And, when you start looking at some of the enterprise models for right now, we're standardized, we buy a lot of Dell. If you wanted to stick into like a single model, it's around the same price, if not in the enterprise market, Dell Latitude laptop. So there's not a whole lot difference there once you get into it. But yeah, our staff Mac pilot, I think our next steps for that is, so we're going to do some interviews and ongoing survey of pilot staff next couple of weeks. And then what I'm looking at is probably expanding the pilots to additional applicants in our initial pilot pool. And so like I said, we had 63 people apply. We can open that up to more people just so we can get more usage data. We've tested just things like, understanding our printer solutions, things like that. Running our MDM. Now we can open it up to more users to test additional load on the pilot. And then I think tentatively, we could start switching district users over to Mac devices, as soon as January 2024. So that would probably involve some planning between Ruby and I about what we can do sustainably as far as replacing devices. It would probably take anywhere from 3 to 4 years to replace the whole district because we do have a lot of new those devices too. So we'll probably do some surveying because we opened up the pilot to everybody to apply. We got 63 applicants. There's a lot of staff users who aren't comfortable being an early adopter with something. They're really comfortable with what they're using so far. So we'll see who wants to be an early adopter, who wants to just be in the middle, and who wants to be laid into it. There will probably be, and we can build a deployment plan around. So summer network refreshes. So we identified 3 school sites as needing significant upgrades to their wireless networking, just to replace some aging systems, particularly some of the network controllers running at the sites, but also access points at some of the sites. So Fox, we replaced all of the access points just to resolve some overall issues. And Sandpiper, we replaced about half of them because the middle school access points were added much later. And we upgraded also some of the upper grade wings previously. In addition to that, at Sandpiper, we changed the wireless controller. We're still working on a deployment at Central of replacing access points. So that'll be a full access point replacement and a controller replacement. Since the spring of last year and into the summer, we've replaced about 31 network switches. So we buy refurbished hardware for those because of the cost, but also because it's very hard for us to find. When you build out a network system, generally you try to stay into a single vendor just so you have control over the type of compatibility issues you might run into. Our HPE networking is near end of life in terms of the product itself. That means that HP Enterprise, which is Aruba too now, isn't making new products with that operating system. It was a product that was, pretty tested and used for across a period of probably 25 years, 30 years. So they've upgraded from there. They finally changed the product a little bit. Which comes, our networking hardware is nearing on 10 years old for that. So we're planning on replacing another 20 to 30. We just generally look for refurbished networking hardware, and that'll be kind of the plan going forward. I think we'll need to continuously replace them until we plan for, whether it's through a bond or some other type of modernization project, just doing another modernization run on our wired networking infrastructure. District phone PBX update. So that was a big focus for us over the summer. So we're working on replacing our Mitel Intertel system. So that system was purchased in 2008. And when we got it, it was refurbished. So Intertel was basically, we went out into a bidding process. I vaguely remember because that's when I came to the district about then. It was already done when I came here, but basically, it was the most affordable option available at that time. We had some other bids from like Cisco and all, and those were $1 million systems, looking at back then. So something that worked with our legacy wiring and also, provided an upgrade. And it's been a pretty reliable system overall. The challenges with that system is it's nearing its end of life too. Mitel is a sunsetting that Mitel 5,000 system totally. And also just the challenges when we're looking for a new system. The licensing fees are really high with Mitel. So anytime we add a phone, so the phone itself is probably in the range of $150 to $300. And then the license on top of that is $175. So when we were evaluating systems, we were looking at, do we really want to continue paying that additional licensing each time we add a phone? It's not just the cost, it's also every time we need to add a phone, we need to go the purchasing process of adding another license to the controller. So we looked at other systems and we centered around free PBX when we did. So there's no licensing cost on that. It's an open source solution. It's widely used. It's based off of Asterisk, which is a phone system that lots of enterprises use. We have a little bit of support on that is that we're buying our circuits and all through Clearly IP, which is the company, and they provide some support for us. So this summer, we basically got about 380 phones configured and added with extensions and all of that. I met with all of the office staff late in the spring to just see what the status of how they handle calling in their offices and what they wanted to see additional upon that. So we configured that into the new system. So right now, we're just working with AT&T to migrate phone numbers. So they are ready to migrate our main lines, our fax numbers. The only thing we're still working on is our DID. So DIDs are basically dedicated lines. So if you call Dan directly, that's a DID. We have about 200 of those in the district. So we're not using 200 of those total. So those are legacy from the Intertel system that was prior to this one even. They used to have direct lines to every classroom, basically. When they changed the system out in 2008, they decided not to do direct lines to classrooms anywhere, and everything came through the front office. So the goal is to just, because all of those are on that current, what's called like a PRI circuit, it's like a data circuit. We're migrating all of those over, and we're going to see what we can keep and what we need to get rid of from then, because a lot of it, especially, is on that 650 numbering scheme. And we kind of own that 620 block a lot and the 637 block. So we want to make sure we're keeping what we need before we just kind of let it go as well, because you can't really get 651 numbers anymore. So that's something to keep on board. So working with AT&T on that DID circuit, right now we're estimating anywhere between 7 and 21 days total to get that over. From the AT&T rep, I think the latest will be 21 days is what they got from it. So we're ready to move forward with that system. We have all the phones configured. We're ready to move in the office. We're just waiting for that DID so we can have them all. This is part of an overall plan to move district calling away from these legacy analog circuits. So included in that are things like fire alarms, our intrusion alarm systems are all on those. The big thing is that we've had a lot of issues with them, just, rain, weather, all of those things affect those. Generally, these analog circuits, even AT&T doesn't want to support them anymore. They're moving everything over. So a lot of our systems, like our Ruby can speak to this, our Sonatrol system has problems at multiple sites, where the circuit basically just won't communicate properly with the analog circuit. It just changes that AT&T, because AT&T has an analog circuit on our end. It transfers over to like a digital circuit through fiber and all that stuff. It's traveling on their data network. So there's some systems get lost in translation with those dialing systems. So it's just, some of them will be able to move over to IP-based systems like our faxes. Some of them, like our fire alarm systems, will move over to cellular circuits. And things like our intrusion alarm, that'll probably take a replacement of a lot of those systems to get those over. But it's just an overall goal to get past that. So some benefits of the new system once it's in place is that we'll have district-wide call transferring. So right now we only have call transferring within the school sites. Anything else, they have to kind of have them call the district office to go through, because we have just 8 separate controllers at the school sites. So there's some benefits to that, in that, that main number is always active in that phone system. But the system is still highly reliant on our internet connection. So if the internet connection goes down the site, most of the phones in the classrooms are kind of useless at that point. It becomes an issue of, the main number still works, but the rest of it doesn't necessarily work as well. So we decided to move towards like a district-wide system, support other district office, and look at some failover pieces and backup pieces in that. So we added we had a district emergency cell phone. We've changed that to an iPhone, and then our free PBX solution or Clearly IP has an app in there. So if the internet went out at a school site, the connection with Comcast or power, that phone can fail over to still carry the main number. So that's a really good backup solution in that it's reliant only on its battery on its phone. It's not reliant on a whole lot else. So it gives us a little bit of a backup on that. We're also looking into some cellular backups for those calling systems. But I think things like power backup will be necessary for keeping a lot of the phones alive in the classrooms past that. And we're looking at that. It would probably be a part of a wider modernization plan, because that would involve a lot of infrastructure add-ons. And another additional thing is all staff will have voicemail to email. We'll have working caller ID perfectly, because right now our caller ID is based off of these analog circuits and these people and coming into there. So like say if you call into Fox Elementary or call out of Fox Elementary, there's like a set of lines, like 7 lines that runs on. You have the main number and you have 6 secondary numbers. So if the main number is being used, it calls out of the secondary number. It still says Fox Elementary, but parents will see a different number there. So that's always been a question for a lot of parents, is like, oh, I got a call from another number. Caller ID varies carrier to carrier. So they may have just seen the number and they're like, oh, I thought maybe it was spam or, some big thing. It didn't look, I know the Fox number, it doesn't look like that. So with this new system, basically that single main number and have multiple lines run across it, because it works all on a digital basis, right? Another big one is the E911 services. So Uray-Baum Act and Kerry's Law require us, whenever we upgrade our phone system like we're doing now as a public institution, is that we have to have E911 services at the room level. So anything that has a phone, basically the fire department, police department has to be able to generally navigate to that classroom or that workspace. So clearly with a lot of systems, you need to have a DID at each room to be able to do that. So that would be, we have 374 phones, we need 374 numbers in the district. Clearly IP offers a service basically that lets us do E911 translation from the extension level. So we don't necessarily need a number at each side. So we're providing a little bit of directions in the E911 data. So the fire department can find the classroom. It's not perfect. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it provides them a rough area of the building and location. Next one is infrastructure planning. So just Rui and I have kind of started looking into what we can do for the district infrastructure. So there's, a bunch, this came up, it's obviously a part of the strategic plan, but there's phases and things we need to upgrade today and things that, are still 3 to 6 years down the road. So most of our wired district networking infrastructure is nearing 10 years of age or beyond that. So most of it was replaced during the 13 to 15 bond. And of those network switches, we have 193 devices total across the sites. The first 5-6 years, we didn't see a lot of fail rate on that newer hardware. Now we're starting to see a lot more, even in our refurbished hardware. It's not perfect, but we're replacing them as they come along. But to kind of get towards an area where we're replacing all of it, we would do a full rip and replace of that system, not necessarily the wiring, but the network switches and hardware itself is probably the first thing on our infrastructure replacement. So for things like that, we're looking into, the district does have some available federal funding through our E-READ program. That's going to sunset in 2 years. The district, we're at the lowest funding level. So that means for what we spend, for anything we spend that fits those guidelines, the federal E-READ program would cover 40% of that. So we have up to $700,000 in there. So we're kind of looking at what the possibility of putting some of those projects and using those funds while we have them. Things probably like network switches. It mostly covers network, wired and wireless, and wired infrastructure. I don't think we'd be able to do wired infrastructure out of a bond project because it just gets very expensive. But I think we can do a first step on the network switches and kind of get that updated and build around it so it could plan around if we did an additional wiring infrastructure project later on in the next few years. Wireless networking, we have about 450 access points at the school site. So most of it is our Ruckus system, and that's about 7 years old at this point. We're slowly trying to replace that with some what we're using as a Ubiquity system. It's basically a little bit more self-supported. I think we probably overall want to look for something unified as far as district-wide as a wireless networking system. So what we're doing right now is a little bit of a Band-Aid. It works fine and works great, but it is a Band-Aid process because it would be a greater cost to do a full wireless network refresh. Another big one is our intercom clocks, bells. So there's not a lot of standardization on the systems. Most of them weren't upgraded in the modernization. So a couple of our sites are probably 30+ years old for the majority of the system for like Nesbitt. Parts of it were upgraded in the modernization where it needed to be upgraded, but most of it is old. So that creates a lot of challenges just with troubleshooting, finding service, for those systems. Sometimes it's hard to find companies who are willing to service those systems, finding the parts for those systems. It also creates challenges for our front office staff, just configuring the systems, changing bell schedules. A lot of them are through like a phone handset that you have to do it. So you have to go through the numbering to change the hours on bell schedules, and you make a mistake and it doesn't work and you have to go back and do it again. So we have a lot of service incidents for that. So I think what we're looking at is how to plan around modernizing all those systems, getting them standardize across the district, doing things like connecting them to our phone systems. There's a lot of, for safety concerns, there's a lot of intercom bell systems that tie to like wireless applications. So a principal could do an all call at their phone, looking into all those things for that system. I think that's probably something that would be part of a larger project that we need to explore, but I think it's just, we're trying to do a network. We're just trying to do a master plan for our network and infrastructure, technology infrastructure, that would be a part of it. Another piece is our alarms and basically security systems. So like I said, the fire alarm system that Ruby's already working on that, upgrading those to cellular circuits. That gives us a little bit more reliability on the systems, because we've had a lot of issues with the analog circuits going out and then throwing a trouble code. The fire alarm systems are always very loud when they have an issue. So that's fixing some of those issues. They added the cellular circuits at Central, and it's been pretty rock for that. Security systems. So we had one site, Redwood Shores, though it's a very new campus, had probably our oldest Sonatrol installation in the district, because it was done, 2010, I can't remember exactly the year, but somewhere around there.
I think.
Yeah, 11. But the Sonatrol system was kind of at a point where it was having a lot of issues and it was in need for replacement. So we looked at alternative products. Our camera provider is Verkada, and Verkada does have an alarm system. We looked at the cost of that. And it came in below the Sonatrol system. So over the summer, we replaced our Sonatrol system with a Verkada system. So it's more of a IT-based product than generally like a maintenance facilities based product, as we've previously done. It runs over, everything's IP based on it, which worked really well with Redwood Shores because that was built with that in mind. So as a pilot school, we didn't have to do a whole lot of wiring changes to deploy that system. So deploying it over the summer, we're planning on, testing through the issues. Gives us a lot more control over the system. We control most of it, almost all of it directly. From going through Verkada for just limited support. The challenges that with it are that a lot of it is self-supported because it is an IT-based product. We have to troubleshoot a lot of it when issues come up. That said, it's also something we understand as far as being, the whole system running over data, just how it works in general. It's easier for us to troubleshoot. We do have a third-party installer that did the installation for us that can provide support for some of the things like sensors, door sensors, things we don't necessarily totally understand. They'll be able to provide support for that. So the plan is to kind of test that out and see how it works at Redwood Shores and possibly adopt it across the district through something like a modernization.
Great.
And for infrastructure next steps, I think the biggest one is just identifying a replacement for our existing Aruba HP wired network infrastructure. That's not the wiring itself, but the physical hardware. We're going to do this year a complete wireless site survey for each site. So that'll do things like creating a heat map of each site to just see. It's a combination of testing devices and basically a testing device. So it looks like a wireless access point. It acts like a user, and it tests traffic and it gauges things like noise levels around the area, but also some other products to just do heat mapping of the sites. Because when we did our last wireless deployment during the modernization, we didn't really know what we were looking for at the time. You have to remember, even though the system went in 13 through 15, it was planning a couple of years before that. So Chromebooks didn't exist. We didn't have this widespread deployment of student devices. We have a better understanding of what we need or our needs going forward. So it's kind of focusing on that, and like where, instead of like dead center in a classroom adding an access point, it's where was the best placement? Do we need multiple access points in a classroom? What kind of power usage do we need from those access points? So that can all go into a master plan for networking. So the idea is to do some full wireless site surveys this year to capture that data for us so we can put it in a plan. We're going to just evaluate the existing infrastructure with clock, speaker, intercom, identify those changes. I think we'd move towards a full IP-based district-wide system for that. And also piloting the Verkada alarm system at Redwood Shores to see if it's a viable replacement for our intrusion detection system. And I think that's most of it.
That's all.
To go back to my point, the wizard behind the wall, make sure everything is working, right?
Yeah, but we try to do this.
Thank you. Mr. Bruno, any questions?
I have so many, I feel bad, actually.
Oh, ask.
I'm gonna go all the way back to the beginning, Chromebooks.
Mhm.
And the incidents, is there an incident limit?
Not really, because you can't restrict students from getting a replacement device. I think that's a big thing in documenting scenarios that we kind of communicate with parents. We won't necessarily, translate into everything for parents, but maybe for the students with higher incidents. But it'll give us that data going forward and see what we can do. We did try moving towards older devices for some of the students who damaged, multiple devices. We do have a few students who probably broken 4 to 5 Chromebooks.
Okay.
The problem with that is it adds an additional burden on our office staff and for us to be able to support another older device and kind of cycles out because it doesn't stop the break incidents. It's kind of like a stopgap. So there's challenges with that.
Okay, thank you. I asked this last week, you talked about disposal. You talked about a lot of stuff now, the Chromebooks, the wires, the access points, all that. Is that our problem or is it just it goes somewhere?
So we e-waste a lot in the year. I think we have like 5 to 6 e-waste pickups every year. And that's generally a whole box truck. And I'm not totally sure where all this e-waste comes from. It seems from everywhere, but a lot of it is Chromebooks. That's definitely I was in a Google webinar earlier. It's something they're considering now because a lot of districts are complaining about it. If we're kind of one-to-one, we're one-to-one at 3 through 8. There's a lot of districts. I know a lot of districts in the East Bay that are 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 on devices. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of districts that are throwing away a lot of hardware. That's still good because like I said before, there's probably a good 30 to 25% of our devices, even if they hit the 6-year limit, the battery health is good, they work fine. They're just not updated. Yeah. Google does have some options like Chrome Flex that they've created, which basically allows you to install Chrome OS on other devices. You can reinstall those on Chromebooks. The problem is it's still a very beta product and it still requires a lot of support. It also requires things like, unlocking the BIOS level functions on a computer. So like our kids are pretty smart. So right now our Chromebooks are locked out of those, but if we start doing that, they're pretty good about breaking into the Chromebooks and doing things like that. So it's a little bit of a challenge. I don't think that the products that Google has right now alongside it are mature enough to fit that need. But the conversation has come up recently in the last 6 months. So I would imagine there's some kind of option to buy additional licensing to support those additional devices.
Okay. And I don't know if you said, is the e-wasting free?
E-wasting is free. We've looked into, it's just a challenge to resell devices. We use them for so long and most of them aren't worth very much. So it's a little bit of a challenge to try and resell them. So we've mostly been doing e-wasting with devices.
Sure. I'm skipping some of them. For the Macs versus the Windows for staff, like lasting 1 to 2 more years, does that make it worth it when it's cost 150% more?
I think it makes, that's a plus side for those devices. I think the bigger thing is a big part of our feedback, the input that we got on the strategic plan is our staff are looking for more robust devices that can meet their needs, battery life, performance. Sure. Our staff are using their devices a lot more than they did 3, 4, 5 years ago. So it's important for us to provide them with a better working device. I think most districts are kind of on that Mac plan at this point, and I think it just gives you a stable hardware channel. If you're buying directly from Apple, you don't have to worry about some of the challenges like we switch between. Sometimes we might have to switch between Dell or Lenovo, just because of what we can find in stock for a given school year.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more of a stable hardware channel us on the deployment side, but I think it just gives a overall benefit of a solid operating system for our staff to use.
Do you rotate for staff regularly? Like they have a device until it doesn't work anymore? Or is it like every 3 to 5 years you get a new device?
It's pretty mixed right now. So we do rotate the devices. There are staff who will run. Like I said, there's staff who aren't really comfortable moving off their devices often. We switch from like Windows 7 to Windows 10. It'll probably be Windows 11 and 6 by 2025. There's a lot of staff that aren't comfortable with that. That creates also a security challenge for us too, having older devices on our network, just with ransomware and everything else. I think generally Mac OS has stayed a little bit more stable as far as the user experience with just the add-ons that have come along. So I think it'll be a little bit easier to refresh on that end for us. But yeah, it's mixed. Some of our staff will get off on a device, heavily use a device, maybe it'll last 4 to 5 years. Some of our staff, it'll last longer if they don't use it as much. What we're seeing more nowadays is just more users on the heavy user side, just because with all of our curriculum being online based, classroom, everything else, just post-pandemic, we're seeing a lot more computer usage for our teaching.
The phone system, the I think free PBX.
Yep.
I don't know if it's like others. Does that the company? I guess that's the right way. Do they do intercoms?
So I've looked into this too. There are systems that devices that work alongside free PBX that can do intercom calling. That would be something we'd probably look into. There's also basically third-party devices that'll connect your phone system to your intercom system, so you can do things like calling from every phone, with a number. But yeah, it does. The free PBX, I would say more than other systems, does support that pretty well.
Are there cameras at every site?
There's very limited. They're very limited the amount of cameras at every site. Just our initial deployment was not to have them inside the focusing inside the campuses, more outside of the campuses. I think as part of there's probably blind spots. There are definitely blind spots in our camera system that need to be expanded just to even support the outside. That'll involve.
But we're not telling you where.
That would involve, adding on other things in terms of wiring infrastructure and all of that.
You mentioned Verkada and you have a third party. Isn't Verkada like in San Mateo?
Yes.
They just don't do support?
Well, they support, their alarm system is designed as an IT product. It's not designed as like a traditional facilities-based product. So they're trying to give you the tools to be able to self-support your system, or to support it as an IT product that we understand that way. So far, what we've looked at, I didn't do the deployment myself, but I was there all of June when they were deploying and working along the techs because I was adding the devices. So they installed the devices, I added them to the system. I programmed all of the door sensors. It was really easy to use in that sense. I think over time, the idea is that with this first initial installation at River Shores, we could probably support troubleshooting a door sensor because it's a pretty simple thing. It's a simple circuit. Basically, it relays back to the Verkada system as opened or closed for a door, sensor. It's just the sensor being open or closed. So it gives us that transparency where you can see it in that single pane of glass and see what's working. It'll tell you if the door sensor is sticking open or closed. We didn't have that with the sound control system, so it's much more difficult for us to support. So I think overall what it's trying to do is just support it as a technology product rather than like a legacy facilities product.
Thank you.
Mr. Leinbach.
Thank you. Trustee Bruno asked a bunch of my questions. But first of all, I love that you referenced the strategic plan a couple times and how technology is involved, and it's good to see that actually going to work at this point. So I had to call that out. As far as the Mac, transition from Windows to Mac, from a support standpoint, do you have any idea of like the level? Yeah.
So from a support standpoint, challenges we've always had with Windows devices. There are device management solutions for Windows devices. There's plenty of them. They're deployed in enterprise. Problem is we're a really small team, with me and 3 others, supporting sites. A lot of those systems are really difficult to deploy and take a lot of legwork and understanding of the systems, which we can do. It just takes a lot of time to learn all of those.
A lot of free time on your hands.
Yes. So it's with our MDM Mosel, it made deployment really easy. So we can order a Mac device. Apple will ship that device and it'll automatically register to our mobile device management. So the idea behind that is that you could ship a device to a remote site and have touchless deployment for that. We'd probably still plan on having a little bit of touch on it, but as far as deploying the devices, it's been very easy for us. Printer management has been easier, which is a big challenge for us on any devices. Printers are bane of our existence. Printer problems are always the big problem, but it's helped a lot there. I'm not saying there's not challenges with things like printers, but it's still there. Wireless has always been a big challenge. Just generally, Mac devices have better wireless. They're better at moving around on networks. Apple generally supports newer standards like Bluetooth 5.2 and Wi-Fi 6, and they're always quick to adopt those standards and develop upon them. Things like Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 7 are going to be really big in these, because the idea behind those systems, Wi-Fi 6 is out now. Wi-Fi 7 is in the future, is in the next few years. Wi-Fi 7's big push is to deal with congestion and noise in environments. So it'll help a lot there. That's always been a challenge for us because we don't use a whole lot of bandwidth, but we use a lot of devices on our network, a lot of classroom devices. The Macs do that better than the overall from what we've seen. Just also things like recovering hardware has been hard for some of the PC devices. With the MDM, we can remotely lock any device. So, we could build it into our process that, at the end of the year, a staff member leaves, we can lock out that device, and it reduces the incentive for getting misplaced or going anywhere else. It can recover them a lot easier that way. So I think there's some IT pieces that are really upon what we're doing already with this.
I appreciate you coming in, extensive presentation and all the stuff that you and your team are doing, because most of the time, all this, just sits in the background note, kind of like our meetings, you're in the background, but all the stuff you deploy is not visible unless it breaks. And then it's a big issue. So the fact that you're doing all this work and no one's seeing it, and then, you're there to support it when it breaks is much appreciated. So thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Koss.
Impressive, the passion that you have and the level of detail in your presentation. So thank you for that. I just a couple quick questions. The pilot program for the Mac device. I think I now know the answer, but it's just for staff. When you say you're going to do a district-wide deployment or migration, that's just going to be for staff. We're still sticking with Chromebooks for the kids.
Probably more Chromebooks for the kids. We do have some Mac. We've had student Mac devices for a longer period of time than we've had staff Mac devices. We have 2 Mac labs at Ralston. One is for animation, and the other is kind of just mixed use right now with Yearbook and everything else. Probably a lot of those labs would still stay around, and even the PC ones might move towards more Macs just for better management. So there is room for a student device. We are kind of testing with our MDM and mobile device management solution, improving upon our student Mac deployments too, though they are.
And we're mostly, it seems like with this one, I was going to ask, if you go with the same vendor for the number, it sounds like you have about 4,400 Chromebooks-ish, right, given the.
Yeah, so it's probably about 4,400 Chromebooks. I think it's probably closer to around 5,000 total in the environment between what we have that's going to go out of circulation soon, what we have in spare pool, what we have in parts pool. Those are all just managed Chromebooks, probably about 5,000 devices. Total.
And it's mostly with Dell currently, or?
We have a mix. So what we bought in the last 2 years was Dell. This year we bought HP Chromebooks. So This year, we kind of, we took the feedback from our middle schools, just we had lead time issues with some of the Dell Chromebooks. So we bought HP knowing they were in stock, and we also saved about $30 per device. The Chromebooks don't change very much. That's a big thing with the e-waste piece too. If you look at some of the processing hardware and memory and all of that, it hasn't really changed much in 3-4 years on Chromebooks. So they're kind of artificially being removed out of cycle in that just because they don't get updates anymore. So the hardware doesn't change a whole lot on them. So buying between the brands just isn't so much of a concern.
Okay. One of the things I was just curious about was, is there, as the media, as the kids get into more online requirements, is there a set like that you look for in terms of average specs? And if so, like, what is the average Chromebook for us costing? Is it?
So average Chromebook runs around anywhere from $230 to $270. There's a $30 license piece on top of that. And then there's any type of cost that we use in deployment. Like if we're doing the deployment ourselves, there's no cost on that, but there's a huge time investment. The biggest time investment we have in Chromebooks is just unboxing. None of the companies have really figured that out. Apple will ship you MacBooks in like containerized, they're easy to remove. None of the, between Dell, Lenovo, HP, none of them have really gone to that system. So we're just unboxing an individual device for each one. So unboxing is the huge time consuming piece for it. But yeah, overall $230 to $270 per device.
One of the things I was just thinking about is my son needed glass frames. And so the person said that, did you want anything like blue light glare because of headaches? And, don't really think of that, but, I mean, I don't know how much that is a real thing or not, headache wise or not, but are we getting equipment? Like, what's your thoughts on that? And you're just in your reading of the knowledge, and do we need something? Is it to maybe to counter that blue light? Because I think as the kids go on and do more online education, even within the classroom, that's a lot of screen time. And I can see how that might be valid. I mean, just in general, I don't know if there's.
Yeah. So like things like, higher end devices like MacBooks do have a lot of that now as far as screen dimming and some parts of blue light control, but it's coming up more. Chrome OS has implemented it in there too, screen dimming. Not all of the older hardware supports it. A lot of the newer stuff that's coming out, even at the 230 to 270 mark, because there are higher end Chromebooks available too, are starting to support things like that to improve vision. But I think a lot of that is based on screen quality. I would say in the last 3-4 years, we've definitely seen the screen quality improve on Chromebooks in comparison to 3-4 years ago when they've come down in price, and the overall things like build quality, but particularly screen quality, which would factor into things like blue light and how much you have to focus on the screen to read it. But Google is also adding, like you said, nighttime dimming blue light features for their Chrome OS operating system as well.
So you're monitoring kind of like if classes are needed.
I don't think it's not necessarily something that's in the current models right now, but I think it's something you'll probably see in the next year to 2 years total.
I would just like to commend you on some of the innovative stuff that you're doing, like the tech drop-ins. Because that came out of the brown bags, not only just the tickets, but I think just people, the staff and teachers just want to know that it's not going into a black hole and having like an on-site presence, I think will go a long way to that. And then also taking that onus off of the office staff, which are handling both. I mean, that's amazing what they do, like people coming in person plus then all this other stuff outside. So
yeah,
I think hopefully that is good to add. And I'll just conclude with communicating damage costs to family. I think that's great, just so that they're aware. And so just to confer, in your professional opinion, so don't eat food or sandwiches over the Chromebook?
No, and I think that's part of what,
Yeah, like,
we
okay.
did communicate a lot.
Water just away.
during, Pandemic, we actually sent out Chromebooks. We pulled everything out of carts and sent them to homes. We did communicate, not to eat on top of the Chromebooks, not to drink on top of the Chromebooks. Part of our monthly communications with, informing parents about damages to Chromebooks is we'll just kind of throw in best practices there as well. Things kids should and shouldn't be.
That's why I wanted to do this PSA, right in the record.
I will say it, kind of a reformat in thinking a little bit, right? These devices are, in many cases, our kids' books now,
Yeah,
right? And yes, $230 to $270, a backpack full of books, at $80 to $100 a piece, adds up pretty quick, right? So yes, we have to take care of them, and yes, we have to, keep things into perspective, not replacing 4 times, but we do expect things to come up occasionally, right?
thank you so much.
Mr. Lineback.
Yeah, I forgot to add one comment. I think that the locker solution, brilliant. I just wanted to add that. That's really useful, win-win for everyone.
Yeah, they were pretty affordable. I was surprised, we looked at them originally when we went to 1-to-1, 6-through-8. They were really expensive 2 years ago. They've come down a lot. Companies like Anywhere Cart, which is what we're using for our lockers, just really have just focused on providing kind of bare bones, like affordable solutions without a whole ton of bells in the system.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all of your work that you're doing. It's just amazing, the number of Chromebooks, wiring, everything. I don't know all the technical terms, so I'll just. I did have a question. So I have an 8th grader and I have a 5th grader in the district. I know for my 8th grader, she has a Chromebook that was issued to her that she then brings back and forth. For the 5th grader, I believe it's that the Chromebook stays in the classroom. Is there an option if parents ask for it to be able to bring the Chromebook home for, say, like 5th grade?
So we've kind of worked it out with our principals to communicate to us students who have a need for a device at home, and we've accommodated that, with devices that we have on hand for students. Basically, it goes through the teacher communicating to the principal makes a request to us, and we provide a device based on that.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your work.
Jerome, I just want to say thank you for your leadership, for working with the team, really all this stuff here. There's a lot that goes unrecognized. And also just to thank you for always being there when we need you. Behind the scenes, like our class postings, our enrollment update, the form stack things folks see, that Jerome has a hand in all that. So thank you.
And your team, I mean, four of you, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jerome.
Thank you very much. Item number 16, CSBA board policy updates, the first reading. And I'll turn this over to Dan.
Yes, our quarterly, I think, CSBA update. I will say one omission was the guide sheet, which we typically provide that was not included in this. We have added it as an attachment, as a supporting document there. This is first read. So between now and next is plenty of opportunity for comment and feedback. Staff is happy to answer any questions that board may have now and or adjust next time.
Any questions or comments?
I do.
Mr. Cost, yeah.
Thank you. I was looking through it, and one of my questions was some of the things around informed consent by parents and guardians. It seems like it's rotating between a lot of the default is yes, unless you send in a written notice of no. So I noticed that with the one that we did recently, where we had to do all the signatures, the physical examination was yes, you're gonna do your physical examination unless you send a note to the principal saying you don't want it have done. And in this recent batch here, I think it was around like student photos, with the privacy unless, so it's like you're defaulting in unless otherwise. So my question is, what is that guidance from CSBA? Is that like, what's the historical like decision making around whether it's a like signature that's needed versus, you know, you're opting out unless you like the default is no, unless you say something like, how does that evolve? Because I think from my perspective, it's really important, especially with our English language learners, but really anything going through some of these things at max speed. I mean, I try, especially if I'm signing my name, just that behavioral aspect, I tend to make sure I'm reading what I'm obviously signing. But like, what is the decision making? Because I think with parental consent, we want to make sure that the parents really understand and know what's their obligation versus not, and just so there's no surprises, full transparency.
Yeah, so most of our policies do not deviate significantly from CSBA recommendations. So if you have this specific policy number or whatnot, we can, you know, dig a little more detailed, and I can give that information to you. I will say, generally speaking, we are required to provide a ton of notifications from the newest piece about the importance of locking a firearm in your home. That is in our new parent notifications to a parent's ability to opt out of picture taking, right? So I do encourage and managing various pieces is a challenge, right? So within our data system, when you opt out of something, especially via the notifications at the beginning of the year, that actually goes into our student information system. So like the picture consent, we actually can look up in our system on those pieces. I do encourage families to make sure that they are reading their parental notifications. It is translated on on this main document, English and Spanish, but via Google, it does auto translate and whatnot. Yeah, encourage folks to read it. Not much more.
I just was wondering, like, there's a kind of a difference between knowing, like, okay, just with photographs,
Yeah.
my student's photograph is not going to be taken unless I specifically give permission, versus this language nuance says it will be taken unless I specifically make the proactive effort of requesting that. So it's just a little.
Yeah, it's
difference, but it's a behavior change, right?
Yeah, and I mean, teachers take photographs. I will just say anything that we use in media, we're very sensitive to. Internally is one thing, but externally is we take that more cautiously. Anytime I'm putting a picture out, I do check those releases to make sure. But yeah, I understand where you're.
Look through it more,
yeah. There's a lot of notifications that we have to require. I will say the district does not sell data. We don't give data. We don't have sharing agreements with our data pieces. All of that is kept very confidential and secure within our systems, under our control and under our direction.
I understand. And it's a fine line, right, between being so onerous on the system, right, that you're looking at every single individual case. So you don't want to like be paralyzed by it. So, okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Leinbach, any questions, comments on the board policies? Mr. Bruno?
Tapped out, throw up the call.
I don't have anything either. Next item 17, future board meeting agenda items. So next week we have our board retreat. It says it will be at the Ralston Library. And we have some regular agenda items there. And then our next regular board meeting will be September 14th. And then we can see what's on there for close, consent, and regular agenda.
I would like to recommend we add some of Assistant Superintendent Who's icebreakers to our retreat.
I can try and add one for the retreat. How about that?
In all seriousness, on the 14th, we should have the election item, right?
The district
For the
day
public.
was added this morning. This was published on Monday, so it
Oh.
will be included for next time.
Yes, there.
Oh, okay, I must have been an old version. Never mind.
Yeah, it absolutely be there. It's not reflected on the one I'm looking at. Trustee Lineback will
Yeah.
make sure.
Right, yeah, I don't,
Yeah,
okay.
we'll add that. I will just say I'm working hard on the planning for the retreat. I'm trying to intertwine governance, equity, strategic plan. The picture I have in my mind is the Venn diagram of how all those things overlap to support our work as a governance team. I will also use this as an opportunity to give kudos to Assistant Superintendent Hu and also Director Simon. You can see that they're already starting their work geared around the strategic plan. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Are we going to go into closed session?
I don't think we think there's any.
No. Okay, great. We will not be going to closed session. Sorry, just following along on the agenda. All right. This meeting is adjourned or do we have need a
You need
motion?
a motion, yeah.
Could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion for the meeting to adjourn.
I second.
Great.
All
And
right.
then do we vote or? We just adjourn. Great. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned at 8:40 PM.
Thanks. Good job.